Well, thanks very much. Let's get some more now. Joining us, our terrorism analyst, Paul Cruikshank, BuzzFeed Middle East correspondent Michael Giglio. He's reported extensively on ISIS recruiting, and CNN counterterrorism analyst, the former CIA operative, Phil Mudd. Phil, how difficult is it for intelligence, law enforcement officials to monitor this type of social media recruitment, if you will?
Look, you can't monitor this. 330 million Americans, you want to sort through the haystack of Twitter, Facebook, their email accounts. You've got sort of social issues related to that, legal issues related to that. Do you want to follow people in America like that? You've also got the volume problem. The easier way to do this, and the way that might have worked in this case, is you don't want to look at 330 million Americans. You want to look at the recruiter and see who's being filtered through the recruiting process. So you don't have to sort through that haystack. You can only focus on a few people overseas who are pulling people from Denver in.
Why, Paul, is this social media recruitment so effective?
Well, Wolf, it's the interactivity which is key. These youngsters aren't just passively soaking up jihadist propaganda, but they're interacting in real time with ISIS fighters from the West who are in Syria and Iraq, in some cases people that they know, and they're constantly encouraging them to go and travel to Syria, constantly trying to reinforce this ideology. It's like this virtual radical echo chamber, Wolf.
Mike Giglio, you recently interviewed an individual who claims that he alone smuggled more than 10 ISIS fighters into Europe, I assume from Syria. This is one of the scenarios intelligence and law enforcement communities have been deeply concerned about, as you well know. Tell us about what you're learning about these various smuggling operations of these ISIS fighters from Turkey or Syria into mainland Europe.
Thanks, Wolf. Yeah, so this is a human trafficker based in Turkey who, for the last 4 years, has been sending refugees from Turkey by boat to Greece. And he told me that over the summer, he struck up a friendship with someone in ISIS who was posing as a refugee in one of his boats. And the guy admitted that he was an ISIS fighter and told him that he was going over to Europe to wait for orders. The smuggler himself is an ISIS supporter, and he sent the guy. Later received a phone call from him and said, send our brothers too. And he said over the next 3 months, he sent about 10 ISIS fighters who were clients directed to him by this original fighter into Greece. And
you know what where these 10 fighters may have wound up?
The smuggler told me that after Greece, he believes they're moving deeper into Europe, but that he doesn't know for sure. He just knows that he sent them to Greece with the other refugees.
And did they have like a plot in their briefcase, if you will, ready to go?
I don't think so, and he was only telling me what he knew, and I think the details he got were pretty sparing. His opinion, and I wanted to say this is just his opinion, was that they were waiting for orders for an attack. But he said he didn't know for sure, and I think it's pretty important that I say I don't know for sure either.
Yeah, because Phil, this sounds like a sleeper's potentially being smuggled into Europe, waiting for that order to do something.
Yeah, I didn't see many sleeper cells. What I saw were circumstances like this, which is more worrisome. Sleeper cells might have connectivity to a center of operations for al-Qaeda that you can follow. When you've got a kid who's 15 years old who decides in the course of months, that's your time frame to collect intelligence in a country of several hundred million people. That's a problem.
Paul, what do you make of this report that Mike just told us about, that maybe this one smuggler claiming 10 ISIS fighters were smuggled into Greece and maybe elsewhere in Europe right now?
Well, Wolf, I think it's certainly a concern that ISIS could take advantage of the fact there's so many refugees going from Syria and Iraq to Europe right now, to take advantage of those travel flows to try and get operatives into Europe to try to launch attacks. ISIS have signaled that they will attack the West at some point. Their spokesman, Abu Muhammad al-Adnani, has made this abundantly clear. So this could be one way they could do it. The biggest concern, though, is about operatives with European passports. It's estimated about 1,000 Europeans fighting with ISIS right now, Wolf.
Did this smuggler, Mike, suggest that any of these ISIS terrorists may not necessarily have Europe as their final destination, but maybe the United States?
No, he didn't. They were Syrian or Iraqi nationals, and they were all posing as Syrian refugees, planning on either blending in with the Syrian refugee populations in European countries or applying for asylum there. He didn't say anything about the United States.
All right, Phil, let's talk a little bit about Elise Labut's report. You heard it here in the Situation Room that the president now considering a new strategy. Don't only go after ISIS, but simultaneously go after the regime of President Bashar al-Assad in Syria as well. It sounds complicated.
It's, you know, in the era of complexity, which is what we're dealing with, my experience in the Situation Room at the White House, at the CIA, is you've got to boil it down to simplicity. Put yourself in the shoes of a Syrian oppositionist. The Americans are, set, from their perspective, several years behind the curve. We're saying go after ISIS. Their objective is Assad. We're saying Assad isn't on our sights yet. Please only focus on the ISIS objective. You've got to be stepping back. The opposition is saying, what are we up to here with our partners, the Americans? They don't share an objective, and they're 3 years behind the curve. I think in the White House, you've got to step back and say, where are we going here? Because over the long term, this position is not tenable.
As you know, Paul, there's a report out there that ISIS may be discussing some sort of merger with another terrorist group, the al-Nusra Front, and that the Khorasan group, another al-Qaeda splinter group, if you will, may be brokering this kind of merger deal. What do you make of this?
Well, Wolf, what we do know is that the Khorasan group tried to do this before when they were dispatched from Pakistan by Ayman al-Zawahiri to Syria. One of their tasks was to try and mend fences between ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra. So it's possible that they're trying to do this again, and the fact that Jabhat al-Nusra and ISIS are both being hit by U.S. airstrikes means that the atmosphere might be right for some kind of reconciliation. But I think it's premature to talk about a merger. There's a lot of bad blood between these groups. They've been fighting each other for the last year. And al-Qaeda threw ISIS out of the global al-Qaeda network in February. So there may be some cooperation at the local level, but I think premature to talk about a merger. But if there was greater cooperation between these two groups, that would be very worrying for all our security, Wolf.
It certainly would be. Mike, let me ask you about another story we reported earlier here in the Situation Room. You're joining us from Istanbul, Turkey right now. Earlier, 3 American sailors from the USS Ross, that's a warship and dock in the NATO ally of Turkey. They were assaulted. We're showing our viewers some really awful pictures. They were taunted. They had bags thrown over their heads. This group called the Turkish Youth Union later claimed responsibility for it. Tell us what you know about this, because to Americans, you see 3 American sailors on shore leave in civilian clothes, not wearing their uniforms, and they're getting these bags thrown over their head, and they're being hit. They wound up okay. They're back on their ship. But what do you make of this?
You know, for Americans watching that, and I saw the video, I would say that's not something to worry about. This is a very fringe group. This is a very rare instance. Walking around the streets of Turkey, I mean, this is not something that's common at all. Any kind of aggression towards Americans like this. I mean, you have fringe groups in every country. I really don't think this is something to be alarmed about.
Because as you know, Mike, there are some people who suspect, who worry that maybe there were some elements in Turkey who may actually welcome this kind of assault on 3 U.S. sailors.
I mean, like I said, there might be, but I think the majority of Turks would be disgusted by this. It's really not something that's common here at all. And again, this is a real fringe group. I think it's almost a shame they get so much attention for this video.
Phil, what do you think about it?
Look, if you're an American decision-making position, you can analytically, I agree with you, analytically say this is a fringe group. In the wake of Benghazi, when there is so much political pressure on the administration to respond to allegations they did not protect Americans, you're going to look at this and say, with all the violence, insecurity in the Middle East, are we sure we don't have a problem in Turkey? And I'm not sure what the answer is.
It's a NATO ally, and already they had been told earlier, U.S. military personnel, even though Turkey's a NATO ally, don't wear a uniform. If you go on shore leave, just wear civilian clothes. And obviously this is going to escalate those kinds of fears. Let's see what happens. Hopefully the Turkish government will take action against those who acted against these 3 American sailors. Mike, thanks very much. Always good to have you with us. Phil Mudd, thanks to you as well. Paul Cruikshank. Appreciate it. Just